Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. It's so nice to be back here with you again. As per my routine as of late, it is 9:43 p.m. and that is my favorite time of recording. Still here in Bangkok, we're having a great time. And in just a couple months, I will be hosting my 2 retreats in Austria, which is so exciting. So if you are interested, stay tuned till the very end. But that's actually not what I'm here to talk about primarily today. I want to talk about commitment, and specifically the fear of commitment and how the fear of commitment often is masked by this preoccupation with freedom, especially in partnership, but I find that it can apply anywhere. One of my biggest fears used to be divorce. So if you are afraid of committing to a partner or afraid of getting divorced, and therefore you have a hard time committing to a partner, this episode is for you. Someone on my Instagram recently commented, "Did it really take your partner 9 years to propose? Does he wish he proposed sooner? Why does it take a man so long to commit when he's on the fence about it?" What I found really interesting about this comment was how it was assumed that it took my partner 9 years to propose and that he just sat there dilly-dallying and not thinking about me. And while that may be the case for some men, it wasn't quite the full picture, but it's funny how society assumes that he was just sitting there twiddling his thumbs for 9 years. Now, I will answer this question. There are many reasons. And I won't pretend to know exactly what my husband's reasons are for anything he does or doesn't do. But I will say, from my side of the street, I gave mixed signals for many, many years. I did so through my disrespect, through my one foot out the door. I even made jokes about seeing where things went, and I put that in little quotation marks, 7 years into my relationship under the guise of being a free spirit. Meanwhile, my relationship was suffering deeply. We were having a hard time being intimate. We just felt very, very different. And I spent a lot of time wondering whether, like many of you, whether this was just relationship anxiety or there was something genuinely wrong with my relationship. The truth is, there was a bit of both, you guys. And I can't guarantee that it'll get better if you are in the place that I was in. But I will speak from my own experience that it did. If you are wondering how that happened, I recommend going back. I don't know if you guys can hear, it's pretty windy outside. Maybe you hear the little woo-woo. Anyway, if you are wondering the full story of how that happened, a few episodes back, I did an episode called How I Broke Free from Relationship Anxiety Revisited, and it talked about the work that I did outside my relationship while still remaining in relationship, and also the work that my partner has done that has allowed us to meet each other finally in a much more authentic way, and for us both to be on our own independent healing journeys separately and together. Anyway, so around that time, 7 years in the relationship, I mean, we were not doing okay. There was some stuff that was definitely better, but I still sent a lot of mixed signals. I would argue that until I got done with my trip in Austria with my teacher, Steffi Price, who is the person I'm co-hosting with for these next 2 retreats in June and September, only after I cleared a lot of my trauma and my fears of divorce did I let my partner know, okay, I'm ready to move forward whenever you are. But until then, I mean, that was like 6-7 years in, and I wish it didn't take me that long to commit, but that is how long it took me. But those 6-7 years were tough. I mean, it was so bad that I was embarrassed being in front of my partner's family, like them seeing how unhappy we must have looked. I think they thought we'd either break up or if we got married, we'd be miserable, and I wouldn't blame them for thinking that. So no, that was not the best time for my now husband to propose and for us to get married. Or maybe it was and we'd still be here. Either way, I'm glad, personally, I can't speak for anyone else, obviously, but I'm personally very glad that we both started our healing journeys separately and together. And when we got married in our 10th year, we were in love with each other again, and we were having wonderful intimacy, and things were really connected. And it sounds silly, but it just felt so right. But that was after many years of it feeling very wrong. And so I say this for 2 reasons. One, to maybe give you some hope, but I also want to keep things in perspective. And I did pick a partner who was in it for the long haul. I didn't just pick a guy who was playing around and had no intention of building a life with me. So although there were aspects of the relationship that definitely needed work, and we both were very, very traumatized when we first entered relationship, I do think I picked a partner that was serious about me, and that made a big difference. Anyway, in my experience, I'm still answering that Instagram question right here. In my experience, a lot of people, I'm going to say guys though, because usually it's guys that propose who are in relationships with women. A lot of guys want to feel confident that the woman that they're proposing to is going to say yes before they ask. Now, I did not give him that indication until maybe a few years before he proposed, and by then, he was going through enormous transitions in his life and in his family business, and then COVID happened, and that derailed a trip to Paris that was probably going to be the engagement trip. But thanks to COVID, that trip to Paris got derailed, and yeah, it didn't work out the way that society status quo said the engagement should work out. So sometimes life is just messy, and I wouldn't change it at all. I also want to say, for many years, both Press and I, we thought we were so cool, and we wanted to not follow the status quo and be a statistic. And so we sort of both avoided tying things down. In hindsight, I can see that we both had both anxious and avoidant tendencies inside of us. They just got activated at different times. And I also wasn't so sure why I wanted to get married. And the only reasons I could come up with at the time, of course my reasons have changed now, but back at the time, I didn't give myself permission to vocalize or even admit to myself my actual reasons for wanting to get married. But when I finally figured it out, it was quite obvious. There came a point where I realized my reasons for wanting to get married were not so much for him to prove his devotion to me, because that was obvious. But I was tired of referring to him as my boyfriend. I wanted the societal familial recognition. I wanted to be able to refer to this man who I've been with for a long time as my husband. I was nearing my 30s, and I didn't want people giving me weird looks. So why is he still your boyfriend after 10 years? I just didn't want those conversations. I have better things to do than be explaining myself. Not that there's anything wrong with not wanting to tie things down, but it was just, for me, I wanted the societal recognition. And once I admitted that, it was a good enough reason to move forward, even if it was by societal standards superficial. But as I move further into my marriage, I'm just going to say I am loving it. I love being committed. I love being married. We're nearing up on our first wedding anniversary, and I don't regret it. But I also want to point out that marriage didn't fix or ruin anything about our relationship. It's pretty much the same, except I get to refer to him as husband all the time, and it's fun. But I just want to say, if you are looking for for the wedding or your marriage or a baby to solve anything, you're in for a rude awakening. It is exactly the same after marriage as it is before marriage. You just have a different label. Getting married should not change your relationship all that much, in my opinion. Anyway, just that little backstory. I want to talk today about the fear of commitment. If you struggle with the idea of a commitment to one person, I get you. The idea of commitment is terrifying. And I don't know about you, but a lot of the messaging I received about commitment was people that we might consider stuck in their marriages. I've heard people refer to marriage as the old ball and chain, haha. And I've also seen people not leaving because they kind of implied that there was just too much invested and they were too frightened to leave and frightened to let go. And at the time, I really didn't think that was a good enough reason to stay. And so I put them into this category of failed couples and failed marriages. So my fears were pretty substantial and understandable. I thought, what if I commit and we have kids and then, God forbid, we get divorced? What if I commit and I cheat? What if he cheats? What if I commit and we stay through thick and thin, but we hate it and we can't leave, or we're too pathetic to leave each other? And gosh, there are so many options of potential people to build a life with. How can I just pick one? What if I pick one and I find out there might have been a better fit, and now I'm stuck here with this mediocrity and I can't change it, and I'll live with regret forever? Do any of these sound familiar to you? At the root of it all, I think we're really just afraid of making a mistake. And if we go even deeper, we have to look at, well, what is it so... I hate the word mistake, because the word mistake is so subjective. And as I talked about in my podcast episode maybe a month or two ago about my relationship anxiety revisited story, I think that was the episode. I talked about how things like mistakes or good news or bad news are really context dependent, right? So in something that you consider to be a mistake after 1 year might have been the best thing that happened to you in hindsight after 10 years. So is it really a mistake if in the long run it improved your life? And I think a lot of us forget that. But all that aside, what if your fear is of making a mistake? I'm not going to talk about the whole subjectivity of it. But okay, fine. For the sake of language and keeping it simple, let's say it was a mistake. Let's say you did something and you ignored all the red flags and you knew it was a mistake and you did it anyway, and oops, and all of a sudden 5 years in, you're like, I ignored my intuition and I fucked up. Okay, all right, let's say that happened. Why is that so bad? Well, I'd be unworthy. Maybe I'd be unworthy. Or maybe I'd be a statistic, one of those people I called a failure. Well, that's the whole thing about judging other people, isn't it? When we judge other people as a failure, if and when we find ourselves in that same exact position, now we get to be called a failure too. A lot of us feel better when we judge other people, but I've humbly been humbled. I should quote that. I have been humbly humbled. I should more say brutally. I've been brutally humbled by the realization that karma is a bitch, and I don't just mean in terms of what happens to you, but also in terms of who you judge, because whoever you laugh at, it might happen to you someday. It could happen to any of us. And so the very people that you judge, you might find yourself in that situation someday. And if you judge them, you will judge yourself in the same way. And so, in a weird way, letting other people off the hook and not judging other people, you let yourself off the hook too. You give yourself grace by giving others grace. Anyway, I, at the time, did not want to be considered one of those people that I had scoffed at, one of those people I'd considered to be a failure. And to let go of that image of those people so as to free myself, that was very scary. I really enjoyed my moral, egoic superiority, even though it didn't seem that way at the time because I was in so much pain. I couldn't see how I was unconsciously getting so much out of perceiving myself as superior to other people. It just denied me of my humanity. But all that to say, I was so afraid of making a mistake, so afraid of being a failure, and I figured it was better to just hold out until either A, I'm certain that there's nothing better out there, or B, make my partner perfect. There's so much at stake with commitment, but I want to present another perspective, which is the stakes of never committing. And to be fair, there are key things to consider if you are having a fear of commitment. There are genuine, real red flags in the relationship that may make it very difficult to have a healthy relationship in the long term. If one or both of you are fundamentally sacrificing who you are in order to be in the relationship, that's something to look at. If you have two polar opposite ideas of what a satisfying life looks like, it's not going to work. I've made some mentions of that, and I wish I could just lay out all the nuances of this, because a lot of times we're not actually being authentic in relationship. We're masking, we're showing up not as who we are, but who we think we should be, and our partner's doing the same, and so their fantasy of you is dating your fantasy of them, but you're not actually dating each other. So, and sometimes you don't realize that until 10 years into your relationship. So there is that, but we do the best we can. And if you can have an idea of what you want in your future, do you want kids? Where do you want to live? Do you want to stay at home? And then look at their idea of what a satisfying life is. And if you guys both get excited by that same vision, and there's no abuse, ideally no addiction, although I think we're all addicts in certain contexts. I'm certainly not above it, turning to sugar and social media and my own variations of substances. You could even argue my relationship with anxious love coach can be an addiction because I can be a workaholic. So, but there are some more societally unacceptable addictions like alcohol and drugs and things like that. If you are in those things, if you are in a relationship with an alcoholic, this is probably not quite the podcast for you. You want to look into stuff like AA and Al-Anon and things like that. Anyway, but let's, for now, I'm assuming that if you're listening to this, we have, for the most part, weeded that out, and that you do actually have compatible visions for the future, and there's safety and trust here, okay? If you are not having to deal with those things and you struggle with commitment, let's keep going. And by the way, I want you to notice if you struggle to commit, not just in your relationship, but with anything. I don't know about you, but when I struggled with commitment to my partner, I also struggled with a commitment to my purpose, or a commitment to how I was going to spend my day, what restaurant to eat at, what to eat at a restaurant. And not to say that you can never decide to surrender and let your partner decide for you. I do that all the time. But if you don't know how to take care of yourself, if you don't know what career to choose, if you don't even know how to respond to an invitation to hang out with someone without getting anxiety, this is all connected. I don't think it's random. We struggle with FOMO. FOMO, fear of missing out, with lots of exclamation points. This is what you got. And dealing with FOMO is not something you're going to just get rid of today and in this one episode, but it's going to take a whole undertaking and overhaul of your belief systems to overcome FOMO, especially in today's age where you are taught that your happiness is outside of yourself. It's in the right makeup, it's in finding the right house, and it's making sure that you get to the top of your career and you find the perfect partner and you get your hair extensions and you get Botox, aka you're not enough as you are. You need to do something external to feel whole. And you should be 100% ruled by your desires, even though a constant preoccupation with your desires means constant preoccupation with not enoughness. And while I love desire and I have a good relationship with my desire, I also know that if you are going to have a healthy relationship with wanting something that you don't have, you need to also have a good grasp on appreciating what you already have. You need both in order to have a healthy relationship with desire. And FOMO, I believe, is an unhealthy relationship with desire. We're constantly focusing on what we don't have. We're constantly focusing on what we're missing out on. And as a result, we are so afraid of more things that we could miss out on. And so we're very sensitive to missing out. I don't know if, maybe it's partially trauma and feeling like we've been left out, feeling like we're insignificant, especially in today's world where everyone is simultaneously so significant online and yet so insignificant because these aren't real deep relationships. And there's also this unwillingness to touch the grief that comes with saying yes to something, with making a choice. By saying yes to something or someone, you're saying no to a bunch of other things. In fact, you're saying no to way more things than you're saying yes to. But depending on how long you say no for, or I don't know, or I won't make a choice, you stay stagnant. FOMO is not a protection against stagnancy. It actually perpetuates it. A lack of freedom or a lack of commitment actually enslaves you. It doesn't create freedom. I really like what Coach Laura Doyle says. Whatever you think of her, some people like her, some people don't, but there are some things I've taken from her that have been very helpful for my relationship personally. She says, get off the fence, you're getting splinters in your butt. I like that quote. It makes me crack up. There are people that I personally know and observe in life that struggle to commit to a career and or a person and are constantly hopping around. Now, for me personally, I would like to get to the end of my life with a legacy, with something that I have proudly built, whether that is some kids I have raised or a beautiful marriage. People know me for being a loving wife, a loving mother. With my business, it is something external. Yes, I want something to have created in my external world. I don't advocate for just going inward forever and never creating something. No, I think that's part of why we exist in this 3D material reality. It's to do something with it. It's just when we do that without a connection to our inner world, it's kind of superficial. But when you have a connection to your inner world, then you can do some really cool stuff with in the external world that is very meaningful. But I want to arrive at the end of my life knowing that I have built something. Let's say that I am going to build a building. This building is a metaphor for my legacy. I start to build the foundation of this building, but, right? Start to build. But then I get bored. It's very repetitive building this darn building. And it's taking a longer time than I expected. And this building is taking a long time, and it's just the same thing day in and day out, and it doesn't seem like there's any end in sight. And it doesn't even look good. I'm looking over at someone else's building, and their building looks way better and way fancier, and they're building it much faster than I am. And they have cooler paint. Oh my goodness. And so you abandon your building, half done. And you start building another building. And what you did is you just left the foundation of that other building. And then you get started on a new foundation. And then the same thing happens. You get tired of that and you leave your half unfinished building and you start building another foundation for another building. And you do the same thing for 10, 20, 30 years, and you've built a lot of foundations, but you have no finished building, you have no legacy, right? I like to imagine what's on my tombstone, and, do I want Natalie, someone who built a wonderful relationship and family and a wonderful business and podcast that people really enjoyed? Or do I want Natalie that had a bunch of unfinished projects because she was afraid of being tied down? I see this a lot with relationships. I see it with people's careers, and I've unfortunately seen it also with how people choose to use and invest their money and time. At some point, I believe it's important to make a decision, give it all you got, and see it to the end if you can. And then, if it doesn't work, you can grieve the loss and move on and try again. A lot of people with relationship anxiety who are in relationships that they're questioning and not feeling satisfied with, they have not actually given it their all. If you're stuck in an unsatisfying dance where you've got two toxic but compatible dynamics where you trigger each other and you set each other off in just the right way and you've played the same dance over and over and over and over, it's worth seeing what happens if you change your part in the dance and you start showing up in a healthy way and focusing on your self-care. And if your partner doesn't respond to that in due time, then do whatever you want to do there. But have you actually tried cleaning up your side of the street? I don't know. And obviously there's nuance to this. It doesn't mean take abuse or settle for someone that doesn't have the same vision as you. But personally, and you guys know, I enjoy speaking about my relationship. I just do. I enjoy it. There's a lot I don't share, but there's a lot I do share because I want it to be helpful. I wish more people spoke openly about their struggles in relationship because I think I don't want to say normalizes the chaos, but it makes us remember that we're not alone. Some of the most dark shit that I've experienced in my relationship I haven't shared, but at the same time, I wish someone else would share it because I could be like, okay, I've been through that too. But like, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna share the shit? So sometimes I decide to share certain things and I get such a wonderful response from you guys, letting me know that you've gone through the same thing. And it's very healing for me. And I like to think maybe it's healing for those of us that are hearing that a lot of us have gone through the same things. Okay. Personally, with my husband, who has the same vision as I do for life, I go a lot faster with him because we need each other to make this legacy, this building, this vision that we have. I could not go as fast in my life without him. And the cool and beautiful and crazy thing is, regardless of how we feel, we both know that we have a life to build together, and it keeps us there when it gets tough. And what's really cool is once you complete a little building or you have an accomplishment, you can always build more and start creating your little empire. So there is so much that I could do alone that just is so much easier and so much faster when you've got a partner who wants the same things that you do. And that's why I think it is very important to find a partner that is on the same page as you in terms of what you both want. Without that, it's going to be very difficult and there can be a lot of resentment and both of you can feel like you're either too much or not enough. I will say, if you are listening to this in your early 20s, and a lot of times I get Wizios I do this little thing called a Wizio, WISIO, and people submit their one-on-one questions and I make like a 10-minute video response. And a lot of times I get people, especially women, who are in their very early 20s or even late teens, and they don't know what they want in life. And so it's very hard for them to feel good about staying in a relationship with someone if they don't know, like, whether they're compatible or not. They're afraid that they're wasting their time because they don't want to find out when they're 26, 27, 28 that they spent all this time with someone just to find out that you have incompatible visions. And I get it. It's really tough. When I was 22 or 23, I was trying to force Preston to decide whether he wanted kids or not, even though I didn't even know if I wanted kids or not. But I figured if we could at least hedge our bets and what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, if I could figure out if I could make sure that I knew that he knew what he wanted, then I thought it would make it easier for me to decide. But neither of us knew what we wanted in our early 20s. And that's very scary. And it means your relationships are so much more vulnerable at that age. And I get it. It's not easy. You don't have a legacy in mind in your early 20s or your late teens. So there's no answers. And the only way to figure it out is just through sampling and trying new things. Try being in a long-term relationship. Try not being in a long-term relationship. This is a time to fuck up, even though, like I said, I don't believe so much in mistakes. But if you are going to make what we might call mistakes, do them in your early 20s. And at the same time, a relationship is an investment. And just like financial investments, there is compound interest in a relationship. They're called stakes, things that you have more to lose when you're in a long-term relationship. You started to build something, right? But at the same time, this compound interest, these stakes that keep growing, it's stuff that gets bigger. Your empire starts to build. So if you chose a partner young, don't think for a second that you're missing out. I really don't believe it. It just means that you kind of got a head start on building something and growing together. But also, if you didn't meet the love of your life young, you didn't miss out either. None of us are missing out, you guys. Can we figure that out? Remember, none of us are missing out. If you met your partner early, you're not missing out. If you met your partner late, you're not missing out. None of us are missing out. It's all just different. Okay? Imagine a sale. I'm going to use another example that can help illustrate this idea that moving forward and making a commitment to something is worth your while and not a loss of freedom. I want you to imagine a sailor in the middle of the ocean. The sailor who knows where he wants to go will head in the direction of his goal no matter which direction the wind is blowing, because he will adjust his sail to utilize the winds in his favor. That is what it means to be committed. It doesn't matter which way the winds are blowing. Your eyes are focused on your goal. You've got your intention. You're moving towards it, and nothing quite sways you. If you need to change course, you trust that you'll change course when it becomes obvious that you need to do so. Now contrast this with a sailor who is a free spirit, who doesn't commit to a destination, who's just like, I'll see where the winds take me. This sailor is at the mercy of the winds and could potentially be out at sea for a very, very long time and might end up somewhere that he doesn't actually like. Who is more free? The sailor who made a commitment, the sailor who set an intention and had a vision, or the sailor who didn't make a commitment and just waited to see where the winds took him? When you don't make a commitment, you have less control over your future, not more. This is a huge illusion that is present in today's society, in my opinion, that by the decision to not make a decision is still a decision. It's a decision to let life decide for you. It's a decision to not utilize your power and your free will. It's no decision is still a decision. It's a decision to let life decide on your behalf. And personally, I think it's a slap in the face to the Creator who gave us free will. I mean, we could argue this is not a religious podcast, but imagine if each of us was given a gift that was intended to be used, and we decided not to use it. What a waste. And I know that not all of us have discovered what our gifts are. That's what our 20s are for. But the importance of moving forward, I believe, cannot be understated. And it's okay to commit to something for the time being until it becomes obvious that we can pivot. You can always pivot, but continue moving. Now, I'm all for making an informed decision, but just know it doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all of the answers in order to proceed. You don't need to have certainty to commit to a partner. You just need to have confidence that you'll be okay, and have confidence that you will be able to adapt moment by moment. And if you don't have that confidence, it's worth examining where in your life you gave up your self-trust. And I have a course called Both Feet In that can really, really help with that. I definitely advocate for looking into understanding your fears of commitment in your attempts to overcome it. A lot of societal false messaging about relationships, traumas related to marriage, and social media are all making us afraid to trust our decisions. But as I said, you don't need to wait until you feel totally confident to make a decision. In fact, a lot of times you become more confident by making decisions. You get to watch yourself handling the outcomes and emotions related to your decision. And it is through doing that you become more confident and trustworthy to yourself. You can trust that you don't need certainty, and you don't even necessarily need to wait until you feel no fear. I was trembling on my wedding day. You can trust that you're going to be okay, and you can simply have the will to give something your all, have some calculated logic telling you that this is a good investment in your future, and make a decision, maybe even with your knees trembling. In fact, I would argue that the deepest levels of growth lives inside these types of decisions. The decisions that are informed but heart-centered, and yet your knees are trembling. If you're struggling to get your other foot out the door, I have a couple recommendations for you today. I mentioned some retreats with my teacher, Steffi Price, who helped me overcome my fears of commitment, which had landed in my relationship. She and I are hosting a retreat called The Inner Relationship, which is going to help you get opposing sides of you on the same page. If you are like me and you had a side of you that deeply wanted commitment and another side of you that deeply wanted freedom and perceived that freedom meant no commitment, this retreat will help you a lot. When parts of ourselves don't trust other parts of ourselves, they can find themselves in a tug of war. And it is so possible to get opposing sides of yourself on the same page without either of them feeling bulldozed. I know that sounds crazy because it can feel like such a tug of war when we're experiencing relationship anxiety or really any kind of anxiety. And we perceive that there's this side of ourselves that's just a total saboteur. And I've used this metaphor before, but it's like having two people paddling in opposite directions on the same boat. You really need to develop a relationship between different parts of your personality. They need to dance with one another and have a relationship and negotiate and figure out where their fears are coming from and can those be worked with. So this retreat is going to teach you the process of integration, which is deeply healing. Some people call it integration. Some people call it shadow work. My teacher and I, we've called it parts or polarity work, although I'm not talking about masculine-feminine polarity, although that is a type of polarity. I'm just talking about opposing parts in this context. Once you learn how to create a dance as opposed to a tug of war between opposing parts of yourself, you can get moving forward and making decisions in your life, and things will move so much faster with way less resistance, and you'll be able to start making what you might hear people refer to as quantum leaps in your life. How do some people manage to just move so quickly in their lives with very little resistance? Well, it's because they've got mastery over their inner vehicle. Their gas pedal and brake are not equally pushing down at the same time. They're using the gas pedal and the brake very efficiently, and they're able to move forward. When we have relationship anxiety, we might have a part of us that wants commitment and a part of us that doesn't want commitment, and they're equally pushing down at the same time, and we're exhausted and we're not moving, and we're maybe moving very slowly, and it's taking a ton of energy to move very, very slowly. This is why shadow work and parts work integration is so important. And when you start to heal and integrate, you're not going to be dealing with sabotage anymore, because you realize the part of you that you thought was a saboteur is not a saboteur at all. It's just a part of us that needs attention. It needs love. It needs a safe place to exist within you in a healthier way. And when all parts of you are on board with a decision, you move forward full steam ahead. I remember when I healed my inner saboteur, relationship saboteur, disguised as a free spirit, but was actually a terrified little girl. When I healed her, I remember calling Preston and being like, I'm all in. And he was like, what? What do you mean? And I said, yeah, I'm all in. I'm doing this. I even made a joke with a friend of mine earlier this week, because I met a new, I use Bumble BFF sometimes, you guys. And I met this girl in Thailand because I was trying to make friends, and I was telling her my story. And I told her that there came a point where I wasn't leaving, but I also knew that my relationship was not super satisfying at the same time. And so I literally decided to choose an unsatisfying relationship. I was like, I know it's really unsatisfying, but I just sense that there's more here to learn, and I want to learn about it with this person. And so I made a choice to pick an unsatisfying relationship, and we both laughed. And I don't blame people if they want to leave. I really don't. I'm just saying that I didn't, and I'm very happy with my decision. So in a weird way, deciding to pick the thing that's unsatisfying and give it my all, that allowed me to move forward. It allowed me to accept my partner more fully. And once I accepted my partner more fully, the funniest thing happened. When you accept your partner as they are, you now leave space for them to grow into the people that they desire to become. And the relationship has completely blossomed. When you're on the fence all the time, your partner's not going to be their authentic self. When you're on the fence, when you're scared of committing, your partner's going to have anxiety. They're going to show up in a way that isn't attractive to you. If you decide to go all in with them, you might be surprised at how they respond to your level of acceptance and safety. And that is exactly what happened to me. So when there's a lot of resistance and you're not sure and you're like, I don't know, you move very slowly in your life. Everything is willpower based. You have to convince yourself of things, and you're exhausted because you're swimming upstream against yourself, or I guess I should say yourselves, because you've got opposing aspects. Anyway, so my retreat with Steffi Price is called The Inner Relationship. We just had a couple spots open for June. So we've got June 12th through 18th, and we've also got September 4th through 11th. September is waitlisted, but we just had some spots open up for June. It's open to all. I don't have a sales page, mainly because we're kind of keeping it a little low key. It's one of the most affordable retreats I've ever hosted in my life. And I don't know the next time I'm going to be doing this. After these retreats, we are likely going to attempt to get pregnant. And after that, it might be a little while. So if you want to take advantage of this, and maybe you're listening to this and you're in, like, I don't know, Germany. We had a bunch of German people come into Austria. It's really, really cool. If you want to come out to Austria this summer, please email me and I will send you all the details, along with pricing, location, transportation, food, lodging, all of that stuff. You can email me at natalie@anxiouslovecoach.com. But if you don't feel like going on a trip to Austria, I don't blame you. It's a long trip. I also have a wonderful course called Both Feet In, which will help you understand why you've got one foot out the door. A lot of my clients need to understand why they feel the way they feel before they feel confident to start to do the work on themselves. And Both Feet In is going to give you a lot of practices to help you move through these stagnant emotions that need to be moved through so that you can see your relationship more clearly. Really hard to see your relationship for the goodness that it is when you're stuck in fear and you've got one foot out the door and you're sitting on the fence getting splinters in your butt. If you've had divorces or relational trauma, you may still have a lot of sticky feelings around things like commitment, which is going to cloud your vision and ability to see your relationship clearly and with an open heart. Both Feet In is really awesome to teach you these tools that I learned to overcome relationship anxiety. It will teach you similar practices that I'm going to be sharing live at the Inner Relationship Retreat. So if you can't make it, don't worry. Both Feet In is wonderful. I'll include a link in the show notes. And lastly, I just started a Patreon. This is a wonderful and sustainable way for me to continue doing what I love, which is making content about relationships for the world to enjoy. So if you love my work, please consider becoming a patron. As a beautiful, beautiful thank you, I am offering exclusive content and also hosting a monthly Zoom hangout to do meditations and answer questions as thoroughly as I can. You're also going to get access to an archive of all past calls for the past year with timestamps to people's questions each month and answers. So this is my way of making sure that anyone that needs support can get it in an affordable way. I'll put the link in the show notes. So that's all, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for tuning in, and just remember that you are not alone in your struggle. If you are feeling overwhelmed with relationship anxiety, I promise it gets better, but it might take however long it takes, and I hope that this is a supportive resource for you. As always, I appreciate you for listening. Until the next episode, thanks again, and have a great day. Thanks so much for listening to The Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.